Test 1 2, test 1 2.
gonna start this, right? Let's start this show.
I think we're starting it pretty soon.
I guess the,
I think if
Mary Kay, you ready?
you ready? Okay. Let me just give it one. Yep.
I guess that means action, right? All right, all right. Welcome, everybody, to the Providence City Council chambers. Look at this place, right? A beautiful place full of history, right? And wonderful events and momentous occasions, by the way. We're all fortunate to be here. Also, it's a great month. We're here to celebrate Black History Month. And it's a special time, I think, for a lot of family and friends in particular who must celebrate Black culture. By the way, no matter what culture you come from, we should celebrate Black History Month to celebrate our brothers and sisters and all the achievements they've done for this great country, by the way, for the world. And this month is about that, and it's a special time. And people don't know me, I'm John Igliozzi. I'm lucky to be the president of the Providence City Council, as well as I see in the audience a former council president, John Lombardi, over there. Council President John Lombardi. I also see, I think Councilman David Siegel was here. I saw him, another colleague of mine. And of course, we have President Pro Tem Espinal, our new President Pro Tem. We have Councilwoman Miller, who presently presides, as well as we also have a guest appearance of Helena Bonanno Folks. She's running for governor. Welcome, by the way, welcome. You're in good company there with that young man there. Oh, he's Rep. Williams. Did I miss Rep. Williams? I'm sorry. I didn't even say. And Representative Williams, my apologies. All this math stuff is really throwing me off, so I apologize. By the way, talk about a driving force in government. Representative Williams up in the State House is one of those folks that we all can count on in downtown Providence, of her leadership up there, of fighting for the city and fighting for the people she represents. And I gotta thank you personally, by the way. I've been very fortunate to work with her over the years, as well as the President Lombardi. I want to thank you. This is a great event. This is actually quite exciting, and I want to thank, there's a person here. Also, by the way, Dr. Wayne Montague, I should point out, another great individual. By the way, dedicated his entire life to the city of Providence. We're so fortunate to have. We also are fortunate to have a young woman, and I call young woman, Councilwoman Mary Kay Harris. Mary Kay Harris, I'm fortunate to have known. I met her, a couple of decades ago, and I got to know her. And we talked about issues and stuff, and she was passionate then, and she was a fighter then, and she was somebody you could count on, someone you can believe in, and someone you could trust. And over my tenure as a council person, as well as prior to her being a council person, I was someone I could always count on. And I'm fortunate to serve with her. And today I know we have to thank her because this event tonight today I should say, and this great day, she's the sponsor. It came from her and her committee, the Black Heritage Committee, right? So we're very fortunate that she's willing to take this on, and we shouldn't forget. I also want to make a note. I guess tonight we have, and first time I guess is going to be the Stages of Freedom, and I apologize if I didn't say it right, but it looks like we're going to be lucky enough to have the first performance of this organization performing in the council chambers. So this is an exciting time, and we're using these beautiful chambers as a theater, right? As a place to talk about and express something that's wonderful we all should do, and celebrate some individuals, by the way, who are important. And some of these individuals I don't know very well, but one person in particular I know very well. And I've been fortunate, and actually know Council President, I call him Council President Lombardi. He knows because he served with her, and him and her, she became the first President Pro Tem of the City Council body, along with John Lombardi as our president at the time. And they served together, and they were a team of people who were dedicated to the city and trying to do everything they could. And I just want to say that when I first came on, I'm at a point where Balbina used to sit. Balbina Young used to sit right here. And I was fortunate during my tenure to sit right here next to her. And her and I necessarily didn't always agree on everything. Didn't. It's a fact. Who does? No one does, do they? But what I did appreciate about Councilwoman Balbina Young, and this is my own personal, is that I appreciated the fact that she was willing to talk out issues, talk about what was important, and try to reach compromises, and try to do some good together. And sometimes we supported each other, sometimes we didn't. A lot of times we did. And we were able to do a lot. Now, one of the big things I want to mention about CDBG, it's called a Community Development Block Grant Budget. And every year, there'd be this, the block grant budget. And Councilwoman or President Pro Tem Balbina Young was the chairperson of the ordinance, ERP committee. So the budget would come before her. And she was always willing to talk, by the way, to me and my colleagues, to talk about the neighborhoods and how we can get that money to these community issues, right? To the community centers, to brick and mortar projects in the city. And she always was willing to talk to me and work things out. And I really appreciated all the time that she was willing to do that. By the way, that doesn't happen all the time today. Today in politics, everybody is so strident and so closed-minded. They're unwilling to at least listen to each other. And by the way, on this council floor, we've heard the battles. We've seen thunderous speeches, thunderous back and forth, stuff that people would say that you'd put, stand your hair up, right? That today, back then, if there was YouTube and that stuff, people would be all shocked. But the council members, at least back in those times, they would talk about the issues. They would advocate for their neighborhoods, their community. And it came from their heart. It came from their passion. And I was fortunate enough to serve a Councilwoman Balbina Young, and that's where she came from, right? And by the way, if she was wrong, she'd say it. That is someone who had the ability to be honest about issues. So she was really good. And I learned a lot from her, by the way. I was a young guy. Right? I started in the 90s, so I was lucky. I learned from her. And I learned from President Lombardi. I learned from every single one of my colleagues, right? And one of the things I want to say the one of the things I did learn was about being open-minded, right? And I would see her on this floor, and I would see her in a thunderous manner, advocating, fighting for an issue. By the way, you didn't have to agree to it, but you had to appreciate her passion. It was amazing. And by the way, it wasn't in a spiteful manner. It wasn't in a mean-spirited manner. It was in a passionate, articulate, understandable manner of strong advocacy of what she was trying to persuade us all to do. I never heard her go low in the gutter. I never heard her say crazy, expletives and all this kind of how people get. She was articulate, she was intelligent, and she was honest and passionate about her issues. And I always appreciated that. And by the way, at the end of the day, when we were all done for the day, we crossed this bar. We'd all talk, go get something to eat, get something to drink. We have relationships, and we have a friendship. We understood we could agree to disagree. I know that sounds kind of like a cliche, but you could agree to disagree here, and you could also still have a relationship out there. So she was special, and the city of Providence was lucky to have her, especially that community, was lucky to have her to represent the city and that community for so long. So I just want to say that I'm really excited about seeing this play. I'm wondering how they're going to, I presume they're going to portray it in a wonderful light. I'm wondering what the story they're going to tell. So I'm excited. So I'm looking forward, I guess, to the three performers, and I believe is it my frame saying it right? The three people that it's based on, of course, is Eleanor Eldridge, William J. Brown, and of course, the first black female council person, Balbina Young. and she was the first black female chair of IRP, I believe, first black female as president pro tem, as well as I think the first black female as president of the city council. So she did a lot of firsts, and she was someone that we all could be proud of. I know I can, I know all of you do, so I look forward to tonight's performance, and I look forward to hearing, of course, my colleague here at the end and talk about. Thank you all for attending, and I gather we'll begin the performance and let the show begin. Thank you.
Introducing Eleanor Eldridge, the first black woman to try a case in court. Eleanor Eldridge was a woman ahead of her time. Born free in Warwick, Rhode Island in 1784, her hard work and a keen business mind allowed her to accumulate a small fortune and to buy a large house on Spring Street in Providence, near what is now Classical High School. In 1836, a white man stole that house from her, thinking she was defenseless and inept. She fought back, developing a working knowledge of the court system, using her connections to power brokers in the white community, and publishing her memoir to pay expenses. Listen in as she tells her fascinating story of the court proceedings.
I am Eleanor Eldridge, and I was born free in 1784 in Apponeog, Rhode Island. I have been working since I was 10 years old. And for the past 22 years, I have owned and operated 2 businesses, specialized in spinning, weaving, soap making, cheese making, and nursing. I am the property owner of 2 homes. And as Your Honor can see by the deed, my home in Providence was auctioned off to pay a $250 loan. My home is worth well over $2,000. Now, when the loan came due, I was traveling with my brother to Adams, Massachusetts, and I came down with typhus, and I had no choice but to stay in a tavern in Hadley, Massachusetts. I must have stayed there for 2 months. When I was well enough, I returned to Providence. First thing I did was stop to get some bread for my dinner. I walked into the bakery store and was about to greet the young baker's son when he looked at me and said, "No, Eleanor, you be dead. And I don't truck with no dead people." So it took me a while to calm him down, and then I eagerly went home, only to find out that my home had been auctioned off for $1,700 to a Mr. Benjamin Balch. Now, the Sheriff William Mann, he authorized that sale. My home was very large, and I built 2 additions on each side. One side was for me to live in, and the other I rented out to tenants. Mr. Balch demolished both sides. Now, the side mine, there was 5 tenants that I was renting to, and 4 children. And in a single moment, with one stroke of the hammer, I was deprived of all the fruits of my hard labor. And my tenants were forced to live in barns and in the woods. I went to see Miss Frances Harriet Whipple Green. I had worked for her for like 16 years. And she decided that we would write a book of my memoirs. And the money from the sale of the books would help me to get back on my feet. Because you see, the money that I received from my tenants allowed me to earn an extra $150 a year. And now I was financially struggling, something I hadn't done since I was 10 years old. As you can see, Your Honor, by the second trial, Sheriff Mann swore that he had indeed advertised the sale in 3 places. But you see, I was fortunate enough to know and work with Judge Tillinghast. And he introduced me to the district attorney, Attorney Green. And Albert Green told me that if the sale was not advertised in 3 places where people could see it, it was unlawful. So Sheriff Mann swore, "Oh yes, I hung the sign up in the marketplace and in the tavern and right here on the courthouse door." He even brought witnesses to swear that he was telling the truth. But the judge said that he didn't need to hear the witnesses, and the case was decided in his favor. So, I hired 2 investigators to go around and see if they could find anyone anyone who had seen the advertisement, but no one could be found. And that is why I am here to file a suit against Sheriff Mann for the unlawful sale of my property and for perjury. I never got to file that suit because before we could go to court, Benjamin Balch came to me and said he would sell me my house back for $2,100 and 2 years worth of rent. So I went to the bank, started to take out a loan, but before I could even complete it, he was back at me. Well, if you want your house, you're going to have to pay me $2,300. After all, you know, it took a lot of time and effort to tear down your house. Okay. I went back to try and take out another loan. But before I could open the doors of the bank, he was right there. If you want your house, I have decided you're gonna have to pay me $2,500 because you have to pay for all that furniture you left in my house. And not to mention the time and trouble it took me to get the house. With the money from the sale of the books and money from friends and family, I finally was able to buy back my property and say goodbye to Sheriff Mann and the judicial system. I walk down the street and I hear them. She's just too proud, and she certainly isn't humble enough. She's not even educated. She should have never been allowed to own property. Who does she think she is? I don't think. I know. I am a colored woman, and I ask no one for nothing. I reply, read only on my talents that I have mastered. That is what I rely on. I've worked hard. I've had dreams, and I made those dreams a reality. And I stand here, and I'm saying it is my wish, my hope, that all women, regardless of race or color, have dreams, make them a reality, not just for us, but for the sake of future generations. Because I believe that one day women will sit in these seats, they will make laws, and they will pass them. They will pass them to make this world a better place. And I want to thank you for listening to my story and for believing in yourself.
Introducing William J. Brown. Born in 1814, William J. Brown was a leading figure in 19th century Black life in Providence. In his remarkable 1883 autobiography, he recounts his life as a free man of color on College Hill. Descended of his grandfather, Cudge Brown, who was enslaved by the Brown brothers. William relates the details of a property transaction with Kodge's former master, Moses Brown, after he'd freed him. His is a cautionary tale of a blind trust and white privilege. Listen in as the distinguished Mr. William J. Brown shares his story.
Greetings, friends and city council members. I am William J. Brown, a leading citizen of Providence. Perhaps you know of me from my autobiography. I had 500 copies of it printed in 1883 by Angel and Company, the printer on Washington Street near Dorrance. Certainly you've heard of the Sons of Providence, the four Brown brothers, Joseph, John, Nicholas, Moses. It is from them that I get my surname. My grandfather, Cudge, was brought to Providence in 1764 as a boy of 7 on a slave ship owned by the Browns. Grandfather Cudge was a co-op slave. That is, he belonged to all four brothers and was used by them as they needed. He spent most of his time working on Moses Brown's huge Wayland farm east of Brown University. He was really the manager of Moses Brown's farm as well as the other slaves. He had a real backbone, knew how to stand up for himself and the other slaves. So did my father, Noah, who as a boy of 9 also worked on the farm. One morning during breakfast, father had said, "Damn, musty soup again." Mr. Brown heard him and said, "What did thee say, my boy?" I said, "Musty soup." "Is that soup musty?" he asked. Tasting it, he spat it out and called for his wife, chastising her in front of all the men. "Is my house not fit to give my help good victuals? You've been feeding them week after week on spoiled soup. I don't want you to give them any more such stuff. I've tasted it. It is fit for hogs." And that was the end of that. When Mr. Brown departed, his wife called my father Noah Black Devil. When Mr. Brown became a Quaker instead of a Baptist, he repented in the business of holding human beings as property and freed his slaves. My grandfather Cudge then drew wages for his work. He saved his earnings and brought a huge lot of land from Mr. Brown on Only and Camp Street. And he built a house on it. Years later, grandfather had visited father, who was a privateer on a ship under Captain Comstock when it was on port on South Main. Grandfather had mentioned to Captain about the property he owned. Captain asked him if he owned the property, free and clear. Grandfather had said yes, but that Mr. Brown never gave him the deed even though he had promised. Captain Comstock was a fine man and told grandfather to drop everything, go get that deed. So, grandfather and father, dressed in their absolute best, went to go see Mr. Brown about the deed. When Mr. Brown came out, he had said that he had property from New Bedford and to come back another time and he would draw up the deed. Time passed, and father went out to sea again for 4 weeks. Sadly, when he returned, grandfather had passed. Father gave up going out to sea. He plowed grandfather's land, cultivated it, and soon grew enough vegetables to feed his whole family. About that time, my uncle, James, encouraged father to go see Mr. Brown about the deed. Mr. Brown said that he'd forgotten all about it and that he sold it to Mr. Angel, who wanted the property, saying that your father was a good man and lived in my house for many good years. So I guess we're about square. But there is a strip of land about 10 feet wide. I'll give that to you. That's all my father received. Father then went to Mr. Angel and asked him, "You want to sell your strip of land next to mine or buy mine?" Mr. Angel, thinking father had no money, said, "I'll sell you mine for $25. "When will you give me the deed?" Father asked. "As soon as you give me the money." Father then drew from his wallet and counted 25 bills and placed them in the hand of a very surprised Mr. Angel. "This is the land my brother and I, George, now occupy. 40 feet of what used to be 150 feet. Sad, but true. Sorry. Sad, but true. This land, today, our land. Today, this land, our land, is a huge parking lot on University Heights on Olney Street. Mr. Brown made up the rules as he went along by enriching the white Browns, by cheapening the black Browns. Mr. Brown wrote hundreds of deeds and manumissions for white people and made money off his semi-legal work. I think it would be wonderful if the Providence City Council could get the Providence City Solicitor to get that land back from my family. Well, it's been a pleasure sharing my thoughts with you all. I'm told that another legend is here among with us, Balbina Young, the first ever African-American woman to be seated in the Providence City Council. My, look how Providence has changed.
Introducing Balbina Young. Born in Providence on the same streets as William J. Brown, Balbina Young rose to prominence when she was elected as the first African-American woman to the Providence City Council in 1988. In her groundbreaking political career, she put housing rights center stage, helping to improve South Providence and the lives of its residents. She is a living legend whose accomplishments are a shining example for young black women to emulate. Please listen as the Honorable Balbina Young shares her story.
I am Balbina Young. Born and bred right here in Providence, Rhode Island, Fox Point, yeah. I lived on Wells Street, a block from Benefit. Believe it or not, in the house that Mr. William J. Brown had lived in, the famous community leader. We moved to Smith Hill when I was 5, I went to Hope High and got married in the 11th grade, and have been married to the same man for 57 years. That's right. Then I lived in the 11th Ward on South Side on Public Street. I worked for the Urban League for 10 years, then later, John Hope Settlement House. I was the first African American woman elected to the Providence City Council. As a matter of fact, I was the first African American woman ever to be elected to any city council in the state of Rhode Island. Senator Charles Walton came to see me one day at Urban League, where I was working as a social worker, and said Councilman Tommy O'Connor was not going to run for re-election so he could attend law school. So there would be a vacancy. Was I interested in running for the seat? He thought I had the right temperament and drive to be on the council. I met with him, Councilman O'Connor, and community leader Mo Adams, and I decided to run. I raised $5,000 and spent it all, every last penny. This was 1988. There were a lot of people who didn't want me to run. One man said, "You're a woman. You should be at home in the kitchen cooking food." I said, "Let me tell you, sir, when I get to City Hall, I will be stirring things up." That man decided he was gonna vote for me because he liked that I was going to stir things up. The primary was a 4-way vote. The general, a 2-way. I won by a landslide. Joe Paolina, the future mayor, called me and told me I had won by 85%. Oh, my God. I thought, this is real. I have to deliver and do this job well for my community. It didn't take me long to learn that you had to be nice and friendly and use a little bit of vinegar to get things done. Housing displacement was big for me. The South Side was being gentrified quickly. Most of the empty lots were filled with trash. Little by little, the houses were being run down by landlords on purpose. This was happening all over the country. Small outside developers were buying them up cheap to move Black folks out. The city was doing nothing to improve the neighborhood. So I decided to make it my job to get the city to start acquiring lots and cleaning them up. I called my housing campaign Black Stone on the South Side. I wanted to emulate Blackstone Boulevard on the east side where Mayor Cianci had lived, with the beautiful trees and gardens and homes. A classic neighborhood. Whoever would talk to me, I would talk to them. I talked to everybody. It wasn't easy, but I worked with Lloyd Griffin to upgrade his properties. He had no trees, a cement backyard, like a prison camp, a concrete jungle. I wrote letters to U.S. Senator Jack Reed and Secretary of HUD Jack Kemp. Together, we put pressure on slum landlords and force them to clean up their properties. I worked with Joe Cafee, Providence Redevelopment Agency, Tom Witten of John Hope Settlement, and State Rep Harold Metz, who secured state funds. I worked with Alma Green of the Women's Development Corporation, who was fixing up all the houses on Pine Street. She was a tough cookie. I had to do war with almost all housing developers. They didn't share my view that the housing should be for the people that already lived in the neighborhood. SWAP wasn't a true advocate of housing. They wanted to control everything and push the poor people out. Southside had problems like all neighborhoods, but the city and the state wanted to put every social service program in South Providence. Needle exchange programs, drug programs, homeless shelters, Amos House, SWAP, Macaulay House, soup kitchens. The needle exchange program was run in a vacant lot without our permission. They didn't want the homeless downtown because it would make them look bad. So they moved the big homeless shelter to South Providence. That doesn't help a neighborhood create a good way to grow and improve. Rhode Island Hospital was greedily buying property in South Providence to expand. Councilman Tommy O'Connor had the council pass a law that created an institutional zone beyond which the hospital could not expand. I spent a lot of energy making them follow the law. They had tried every trick in the book to buy land outside the zone. One way was by having the other medical businesses that were in league with them buy or build businesses outside the zone. There would be no South Providence if we hadn't fought the hospital. There were two real nice triple-deckers on the east side that Brown University wanted to tear down to build on the land. When I heard about this, I got involved. We had a property lot, and all we needed was a house. It cost a lot of money to move that house down the hill on a Sunday morning. Each wire had to be temporarily removed, 1,000 each. You should have seen it. The second house was just too big to move without cutting down trees. Rhode Island Hospital paid for the move. That was the big news story of the year. This black woman moving a house. Mayor Cianci was mad at me for the controversy. He said, "Never again." I'm proud of that house. It sits at 493 Public Street. It looks beautiful and has increased in value. I was able to get things done by disarming a lot of these men, catching them off guard, by being nice looking, dressing like a librarian, calm and easygoing. And then I would pounce. I was a lioness, a Black Panther in a dress. I was having fun at City Council. But it was like pulling teeth to get people to look at South Providence as holistic, to see the children, the people, the businesses. My relationship with Buddy Cianci was stressful for him. He was afraid of me He had never gone up against a black woman before. He would always try to be my friend, but I told him friendship takes time and mutual respect. I worked mostly with Frank Correnti, his chief of staff. He was a nice man and very respectful of me. But he was politically dangerous, but a very smart man. Every park in the neighborhood I created, including the beautiful Jacqueline Clements Park. It was an abandoned mechanic shop. The city acquired it, tore it down, and built a park. Oh, there's a park in Wiggins Village that they named for me. Wayne Montague got that done. When I think about what I've done, I'm pleased. Looking to the future, I want to see more home ownership opportunities, an end to police abuse, and more educational opportunities for our youth. As councilwoman, I was always calm and cool and collected. I didn't look militant. I would catch him off guard. Inside, I had to get through that door. Once I got in the door, I knew I could make things happen. I had to be deceitful sometimes, a little deceitful, for my community, to get things done for my community. You know that slogan that they used to chant? By any means necessary. The people united will never be defeated.
If you don't mind, I want to keep my mask on. I know you can hear me very well, right? First of all, I want to say we have been through a historical traveling of the house I live in. Let's just look at it that for a second. We went through the 1700, the 1800, the 1900, and here we are in the 21st century. And we're still struggling for the same exact thing: a place to live, a right to have property. We fight for everything from the 1700s to the 1900s, with Councilwoman Young still fighting and fighting. But a friend said something to me today: it's not too late for us to change and make things different. It's not too late. As we began to see a lot of struggle performance. Right now, I'm gonna ask Brandon to come up, and I'm also ask Rob. Brandon and Rob. And Brandon, I want you to introduce these actors, and I want them to do what we do, bow. And Rob, I want you to come up, because we're gonna move on with history. Brandon, can you please introduce each and every one of those actors for us? Yes. And by the way, this generation is the generation that you've seen today, and the generation that are really, really making strides and bringing our history to us. As you know, Black history is not just Black history, it's not just Black history, it's culture. It's something we all embrace. We all
And last but not least, after a beautiful, honorable performance, our Balbina Young. Alana, please come up. And this is our cast for Black History Month, our theatrical performance, and we'll now take a bow.
please take a bow. That was wonderful, wonderful. So right now I'm going to ask Rob, come up and introduce yourself and tell us where we're going from here with our history, Black History Study.
Good afternoon. I'm half of Stages of Freedom along with Ray Rickman. We are an award-winning nonprofit at 10 Westminster Street, and our work is multifaceted. One, we teach African-American children in Rhode Island how to swim because they drown 5 times more often than white children. We mentor the likes of Darius. I've known Darius for 7 years. We want to make visible and provide opportunities for the talent that exists in our community to rise to the surface. And lastly, we tell the stories of African American history, and as Councilwoman Harris said, this is a shared history. It is not a black or a white history, it is an entwined history. It's filled with pain and hope and possibilities. And those are the things that Councilwoman Harris spoke to. Where do we go from here? There's still time for us to make this change. So it's been an honor to partner with the City Council in creating these pieces and working with Brandon to bring them to life. Thank you so much for letting us participate.
And like Brandon said, there is a lot of other people connected. We had our communication people, they are here today, and they made sure that they were able to get you guys here. And by the way, give yourself a hand for being here, because thank you. Thank you so much. You know, the most exciting thing for me joining the council was the fact that I found out through our archivist, I call him that, Caleb Horton, that we have one of the most richest history of Black history in the archives, of Black people who actually lived right here in Providence. A lot of them shared space where I live now, still in the South Side. And they had a lot that they did for the city. There were people like Frederick Douglass who came and helped with the voting rights, who came here to Providence. So Providence have a lot of rich history. And I want to bring up Caitlin Horton, because for the last 6 years, we've been sharing this story with each and every one of you. Many of you have joined us from the past and have been here with these stories. But Caleb is someone who is able to bring the theme, the storyline together, and to help us educate ourselves. Because there's a lot of things that I did not know, as old as I am, about my own history. Because a lot of that was kept from us, you know. But I want to thank Caleb for the work that he's done. I want to see this not only be here in the City Hall, but to move into our schools, move into our libraries. And without further ado, I want Caleb to come and talk about your crew. What was it like? And yeah.
So, thank you all, thank you. So I'd really like to extend my thanks to Mary Kay. Mary Kay and I have been working together since 2015 to make Black History Month a staple for not only the archives, but also the City Council. It's a joint effort, and she's been phenomenal. She's helped provide this platform for us. And we've had various different exhibits. Last year we had a dedication to Michael Van Leesten that was virtual, that was a wild success, and I have to thank our Ziggy over here, Mike Giles, for that, for helping perform that, or produce that rather. But all of our history is up there in the archives. So this is a way for us to present our history to the community, whether it's through performance or historic displays. We actually have a display out right now on Balbina Young, and we have some artifacts that belong to Eleanor Eldridge, like her original writ, where she was summoned to court. And that comes right out of our own personal collection in the city archives, a writs and warrants collection that goes back to the 18th and 19th century. So this is our way to present the history and our culture of Providence to the people, and it's been a real honor. So I welcome you to come visit our archives. And again, I have to thank Council President too for making some of these displays possible as well. Our founding documents case is outside. We have displays in the history of the City Council available. So I welcome you to come check out the history. We have over 380 years of it upstairs in the archives, including much of our African American history too. So I thank you, and thank you for coming today. Thank you.
Caleb had already mentioned our council president. Stand up one more time. Our council president, John Igliosi. And as you know, he served with Balbina Young, you can tell, right? Because the story can go on and on. I was hoping that, because he had so many of them, I was hoping at one point it would be, that would be the story. But we want to thank everybody for coming here today. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for sharing in the history. As we continue this story, let's continue talking about special housing, displacement, and all the things that's important to our communities and to our city. What makes us as a community, what makes us neighbors, what makes us come together, what makes us want to live together. These things are very important. So let's continue this conversation as we go forward. I was asked by request that Representative Williams wanted to have something to say. I'm gonna really leave it up to the president. Is that okay? All right. Let's share the space.
Good afternoon, everyone. 1988. Think of those years and the date. Imagine 2022, and we are faced with exactly the same issues plaguing that was near and dear to Councilman Young's heart: housing, all the social ills in our neighborhoods, the lack of what we deserve. But it has happened right before our eyes. But Councilwoman Young, a Taurian, can't beat that. A Taurus the bull was determined to make inroads in the city, in the capital city, in our neighborhoods, for every opportunity that was deserving. Now, I have been trying to find out the answers to these questions. Things happen in our neighborhoods, in the urban core, and we find out after the fact. BIPOC, where was that derived from? That's a question that I would like an answer to. Can't find an answer. What are the colors to the African American people? Does anyone have that answer? I've heard it, I've seen it, I've been part of it. Red, black, and green. Have you not noticed the change of the colors? I certainly have. On the media, Channel 10, 12, 6, all of our channels, it's now red, yellow, green. And you might have some black thrown into it. In fact, our dancer's hat represents that. Is that something that came about that we now have to embrace? Is it a new change that we as a culture, as a people, as a city in this state must embrace? I'm all for change because change in many instances is good. BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color. 10% has not increased at all. 10% on the state was for Black people. 10%. Now we have included, and by the way, I do not in any way feel the need or am I interested in not having us all be together. But we started with 10% for the Black community. But since we have incorporated Indigenous and people of color, which incorporates Southeast Asian, Latino, and people with disability, the LGBTQ community, I welcome and I'm proud of all of them. But that same 10% that was for one people, one culture, has remained the same. That is not fair. We celebrate Black History Month, but Black History Month is every day, not just February. The Black people, the Black community have been inventors of every single thing that each and every one of us utilize on a daily basis. We, yes, we, the Black people, we have invented numerous things. So now we come into the gentrification and the changes and we accept them and we take them and we embrace them. That can be okay. But where did this BIPOC derive from? And where did these colors come from? Is this our new normal and is this the change? I would love to have that answer because I want to present it and I don't want to make the mistake of talking about red, black, and green when in fact it's red, yellow, and green. So please, that's your homework. Balbina Young is a legend and we must continue the work because the job is not completely done. They only do to us what we allow them to do to us. I congratulate all of the performers. I congratulate and I thank Councilwoman Harris for her continued support with Black History Month here in City Hall. Like I said, our history is every day. Remember that. Thank you.
Remember that. Black history is every day, and each and every one of us have learned from each other and have been able to, unite our struggles or to understand our struggles better by understanding each other. So I want to thank everybody for being here again. I don't want to leave anybody out. I want to ask Representative Lombardi, because he was so close to Balbina. In fact, when he introduced me to Balbina, not introduced me, but when I met them both together, he said that was his sister. I believe everything people tell me until I find out differently. So thank you for being here. I know how much you worked and cared about her as well. And I want to thank all the actors. Thank you for bringing history from 1700 today, and in the 21st century, being able to move the way you're moving. That's pretty cool. So, thank you guys. Thank you. And again, this would not have been anything without all of you. So thank you for coming and enjoying the performance. I hope you enjoyed it. It was perfect, I think. So thank you again. Thank you. Let's get a picture? Yeah, this is a photo moment.